This podcast is made possible by Avalara and Ledge.
Hello, this is Mark Sweden, the CFO at the Beachbody Company, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode number 1000.
A great example of a strategic project is our ongoing growth and momentum with our Uncrustables frozen handheld sandwich. We have a $1 billion ambition for that brand by the end of our fiscal year 2026. We've had to build 3 plants. We have had to create multiple projections against the portfolio, and we've had to think about incremental investments in the form of trade or promotional activity, in the form of traditional marketing or marketing spend. And then lastly is how we continue to fund the startups of these manufacturing facilities. And to your point, that all comes down to how these finance teams partner with the businesses and how they bring those insights together to get a positive return on our investment.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with Tucker Marshall, CFO of Smucker Company. At just 16, Tucker Marshall sought a humble beginning at the Smucker Company, not in the back office, but on its lush grounds, hoping to cut grass. Yet this early rejection, due to company policy favoring employees' families first, did little to deter him. Instead, it left an indelible mark of admiration for a company's devotion to its employees. 3 decades later, as CFO of the Smucker Company, Tucker Marshall is keeping company culture top of mind as he leads a strategic finance function tasked with reshaping the company's product portfolio as it enters new product segments and exits others. You'll hear about that and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses, and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
Okay. Hello, we're speaking to Tucker Marshall, CFO of Smucker Company. Tucker, welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
So, Tucker, as always, we're going to ask you to look back for us. And what we're looking for are those experiences, as you look back, that really had impact, you think, on how you became a leader. What shaped you as a leader? Those are the experiences we're looking for. What comes to mind for you?
You know, Jack, over the last several decades, all of my experiences have enabled me to be ready to be the Chief Financial Officer of the Smucker Company, a job that I truly love, I'm humbled to have, and to be a part of this great organization. And it really goes back to my early days in Chicago, where I joined an investment bank, now under the title of Bank of America, but back then was ABN AMRO or LaSalle Bank. And I joined the credit analyst program. And I really learned what it meant to understand accounting and corporate finance, to underwrite credit, to experience leveraged finance transactions, and ultimately to move into the investment banking practice where I focused on the general industry. And I had the opportunity to be an analyst, then becoming an associate and ultimately a functional vice president within the firm. And it was my experiences of late nights, long days, and hard work that I was able to learn the business, to understand the trade, to partner with clients, and to really engage with folks over time. And that really cultivated my passion for the subject of finance or the activity of being a financial leader. And I've certainly enjoyed my time. As I moved beyond being in the investment banking community, I then transitioned into private equity, where I was able to take those skills and abilities and I was able to translate them into more principle-based activities. What I mean by that is now being responsible for identifying companies to invest in. And we invested in basic manufacturing companies, steel, general fabrication, automotive, plastics. And as a result of that, I really learned what it meant to run a business, to help advance the strategy, to build companies, to fund companies, and to ultimately exit those in successful realization. I did go back to business school about midway through my career. I went back to Northwestern, largely to round out my general management experience. And in doing so, I began to think about what my next step might be beyond private equity. And I became passionate about putting all of the pieces of the puzzle that I had developed over time together to go into more of a public company environment where you had much more fiduciary responsibility and you were bringing together multiple aspects of the overall finance organization to deliver a Fortune 500 company. And so in the summer of 2012, I joined the Smucker Company. And over that time frame, I began to add responsibilities. I came to the company solely with no direct reports, responsible for my predecessor, Mark Belgia, and over time began to accept additional responsibilities in the areas of financial planning and analysis, financial reporting, investor relations, treasury activities, internal audit. I began to partner with the senior executives of the company to deliver strategic initiatives. And as a result, in the fall of 2019 and ultimately in the spring of 2020, I stepped into my current role.
Nice, a wonderful overview for us on the CFO path. We'd love to go just back in time in a few parts of what you shared with us. I'm thinking about that private equity business where you're beginning to observe up close, perhaps, CEOs and C-suite members across the table from you of corporations. What are your first impressions when you think back in time to those C-suite executives? What surprises you, maybe in a positive light or a negative one, about them?
Every CEO that I have encountered has a relentless focus and passion for their craft and for their business. And it all starts with people. And so what I've noticed is very strong with people, the ability to lead and command teams, and the ability to identify strategy in order to take organizations in that direction for the benefit of growth and profitability. They were very much, in my mind, approachable. They had strong communication skills. They had the ability to make difficult decisions. They were good with people. And these were all the attributes that I began to see as we stepped into the private equity space. And so it was just very interesting to watch those individuals.
I'm wondering, as you observed them, if this is where you thought one day, I'd like to be a member of the C-suite, where you're going to stay in private equity, where you're going to go back into investment banking, or were you already thinking, I'd like to do that someday, as you had these discussions with C-suite executives?
You know, Jack, as I stepped into the Smucker Company, I definitely had a passion to be a senior leader in this organization. And the reason why is because I want to be able to influence outcomes and to partner with people, to build relationships, to deliver accomplishments. And you are correct in that. And in the role that I sit as Chief Financial Officer, there are two primary hats that I wear. One, being the leader of an executive leadership team, or commonly referred to as the C-suite. My primary responsibility is to help deliver the company. My secondary responsibility is to bring along the finance function or organization in support of the overall company objectives. And that's what I've been doing over the last 4 years.
Was it always going to be finance for you? Couldn't you have become perhaps a chief strategy officer along the way when you went back to Northwestern? Was there an idea, hey, there are a number of paths here I could take? Or was it always going to be finance?
You know, Jack, if I even rewind a few minutes earlier, I would just acknowledge I went to college to be a pre-med student. And in my sophomore year, I took a macroeconomics class and I fell in love with the study of economics. And it was in the summer of 2000. Well, actually, it was in the summer of my sophomore year that I began this transition into the finance lens. And I always knew that I wanted to take a path to step into the banking community, then transition into the private equity community. I ultimately thought I would finish my career in private equity. But to your earlier point, I began to look beyond private equity and got excited about the prospects of participating or being a member of a publicly held company. And as a result of that, that's really what led me to this area. I love finance because it brings the full picture together. You not only understand the compliant aspects, but you also understand where you can provide value strategically. And finance runs through all aspects or all decisions of an organization. And that's really been an exciting point to me, to being able to partner with all of the executives, with all of the employees to ensure that we're delivering the outcomes. And so I'm really excited about being in the finance lens of this. Further, finance has a natural step forward. I do have responsibility for our corporate strategy and development organization. And so to your point, it was a natural next step. And then further beyond that, I also have responsibilities for our information systems group, inclusive of our transformation office efforts as well.
Well, I want to point out to the audience that you mentioned ABN AMRO first, which became a Bank of America later. You invested 5 years there. You moved on into a private equity firm, the Reserve Group. It was an investment of 8 years there. And here we know you've been at J.M. Smucker for 11 years. So every step of the way, you make this career investment. How am I doing? Is that accurate? Did I miss a chapter?
Absolutely. I've always felt it important to make significant investments where you work, not only to build and round out your skill set and your experience set, but it's a dual contribution. It's a dual relationship. The company is investing in you and you are investing in the company. And I just believe that it's important when you align your values, you find the work that you're excited about, and you do it under the terms and conditions that you find acceptable. It's a very rewarding experience. And I always tell people, if the Smucker Company will have me, I will have the Smucker Company. It's such a special and unique place to work because we are rooted in our culture. We have a very compelling strategy, and we have been successful over the years.
It's such a unique and interesting company. I do want to ask you one last question before we talk about J.M. Smucker. Really, how you got there? Was it a recruiter? Do you recall having several conversations with them until finally there was a match? What would you tell us?
You know, Jack, I was born and raised in northeastern Ohio, specifically Akron, Ohio, and the Smucker Company being here in Orrville, Ohio, has always been a longstanding member of the community, and giving back to the communities has always been very important for our organization. And so at a very young age, I became aware of the products because jam, jellies, and preserves are really relatable and something that we consume every day. But also just seeing them as a figurehead within the community has always been very enlightening and heartening to me. And as a result, as I began thinking about my career and where things might go and my return to northeastern Ohio after leaving for college and moving to Chicago, I always thought Smucker would be a place that I might want to work. I even tried when I was 16 years old to get a job cutting the grass here on the campus. And unfortunately, I was told no, largely due to active employees' family having first opportunity. I knew at that time, the way that they treated that conversation, that this was truly a special place. Also, I would acknowledge that as I began to think about my transition into the company, I did apply for other roles through the career website and ultimately was not given an opportunity to interview and ultimately to have those roles, which in the long run worked out for me. Those two roles were one, a strategic initiatives manager within the strategy team, and the other role was actually the assistant treasurer. So I reached out directly to the CFO of the company, my predecessor, a gentleman by the name of Mark Belgia. And I reached out and asked him if he'd be open to having breakfast. And we had a breakfast at a local Panera Bread. And next thing you know, 2 years later, I've joined the company reporting to him and really help build the finance function and leave a legacy for him as he departed in the spring of 2020. And I fully stepped into the role in the spring of 2020. And so it was a bit of my own chart making, predicated on relationships, predicated on patience, also a hell of a lot of perseverance, to be honest with you. And lastly, is just an acknowledgement as I stepped into the company, I put all my efforts forward to make sure that I was doing my part.
Wow, wonderful story for us, Tucker. Thank you for that. We'll move to our business segment where we'll find out some more about what this company's been up to. There's a lot of headlines in the last few years. Tell us about JM Smucker today. What has it been up to, and what keeps it competitive?
The J.M. Smucker Company is a world-class organization that has been in existence for over 125 years. We participate in very unique and compelling categories that support our strategy. Our strategy is simply to lead in the best food categories, to build leading and iconic brands that our consumers desire, and lastly, to be everywhere where our consumers shop. Our portfolio today is uniquely round out by being in the frozen handheld and spreads category, where we participate with the iconic Uncrustables frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwich, where we produce Jif peanut butter and Smucker jellies, jams, and preserves, along with being a leader in the at-home coffee space with brands like Folgers, Dunkin', and Cafe Bustelo, and then also participating in the pet category where we have leadership positions in dog snacks with Milk-Bone, where we have a leadership in cat food with Meow Mix. And then most recently, we've completed the acquisition of Hostess Brands, which provides us entry into the sweet baked snack segment. And they have the iconic brands of donuts and Twinkies, which are certainly exciting. And all of this is in support of consumers and families because we want to bring those lives and those opportunities, memorable meals and moments. And that's what makes it a special organization.
Now, the product mix is changing, and you just mentioned, of course, the 2023 acquisition of Hostess Brands, many of which brands we know, but you're also selling some brands. What's the overall strategy behind these decisions?
Yeah, so it's very important that we lead with our culture. And leading with our culture enables us to always do the right thing. It's underneath our Thriving Together framework. And a component of advancing our strategy is thinking about portfolio reshape. And what we're trying to accomplish with portfolio reshape is what are the right acquisitions? What are the right divestitures? What is the concept around partnerships or joint ventures? And lastly is how do we think about SKU proliferation or SKU rationalization? And in order to have a leadership position, which we define as a number one or number two branded position in a category, and in a category that is growing, we have to constantly assess our portfolio. And so over the years, we realized that we didn't have necessarily leadership position in a category, so we chose to divest. We acknowledged that over time, private label penetration in a category was becoming more prevalent than branded penetration in that category. And so we've made a decision to divest. Two examples of that are, one, our recent exit in our dog food portfolio, a highly competitive aspect of the overall pet category where competition is strong against folks like Nestle and Mars, among others. And we didn't necessarily have the right to win in that leadership profile. So it was better for us to allocate resources to the Milk-Bone brand and also to the Meow Mix brand, divest the dog food portfolio, realize those cash dollars to reinvest back into our company. Another example is Crisco, an iconic oils brand. We acquired that in the early 2000s as a result of the Jif and Crisco reverse Morris Trust transaction with Procter & Gamble. But we realized that private label had the dominant share within the oils category, and we just couldn't effectively compete. And so that was an example where we also divested so we could realize those transaction dollars in order to put back into our company. Most recently, and I suspect we'll spend more time talking about this, is we wanted to enter into the faster growing segment of sweet baked snacks, where we're creating additional snacking occasions for the consumer throughout various day parts. And we did that by acquiring the iconic Hostess brands that has exciting sub-brands underneath it, starting with donuts and Twinkies and Ho-Hos and Zingers. And so we bought that profile because it enables further growth, it supports our margin profile, and it fits our strategy of leading in those creative categories or growing categories and building brands consumers love that are leadership position brands.
Now, you stepped into the role, as you explained to us, in 2020, and I'm wondering, your tenure these types of transactions and acquisitions are defining your CFO tenure. If we were to go back to 3 years prior, were there as many transactions, or was this is this a new chapter that you're opening as you look to get that portfolio in the most competitive shape it can be?
Jack, we have been talking for many years about reshaping our portfolio for ongoing strength and growth over time. And because I've been at the company for 12 years, I've been able to partner with the leadership team to advance this portfolio reshape. But in earnest, in 2019 and 2020, when I was serving as Deputy Chief Financial Officer and then stepped into the actual role of Chief Financial Officer, we began to outline this roadmap for success over time, and we have been executing against that. So in the last several years, we've completed about a half a dozen divestitures. We've completed one acquisition. We continue to advance significant partnerships throughout our company, all in service of having the right portfolio, the right mix of portfolio, and the excitement of our brands. And we do this all in support of our constituents, which really start with the consumer, through the customer, through our employees, our suppliers, the communities, and then ultimately for our investors, because we have to make a profitable return for our investors who invest in our publicly held company.
We're wondering, as you stepped into this era of the portfolio and sharpening the competitiveness of it, how that finance organization might have changed. And certainly in investor relations, you have to tell the story. You have to explain why. And also your FP&A team. There's a lot of number crunching behind the value of these products and how this acquisition is performing and succeeding. And here's the data that reveals it to us. Who are the people behind this? And I guess it's a finance organization type of question. Did you beef up investor relations? Is your FP&A team, a third larger? I don't know.
Jack, we lead with one of our basic beliefs, which is referred to as doing the right thing. And that, I think, is a unique point for the finance organization. And the reason why I share that is that I believe the finance function of finance individual has two key responsibilities. One is to be a steward of financial compliance. That's at the root of everything we do. Doing the right thing, ensuring the books and records are accurate and complete, and we have a healthy control environment and support of our financial profile or integrity. But then to your second point, we also have to bring strategic advice and insight in support of our business partners, not only within the finance function, but beyond the finance function. And we here at the Smucker Company have two different structures in support of how we help realize value for key decisions that we make. One is we have direct finance leads to each of our businesses. So for example, frozen handheld and spreads, our coffee business, our pet business, our new sweet baked snacks business, along with our international away from home business. So dedicated finance leads that are partnering with leadership teams to help deliver that compliance, but also those value-added insights. I often refer to them as the navigators within those respective teams or areas. Then we also support from more of a corporate lens, where we have a corporate FP&A or financial planning analysis group that partner to deliver annual financial planning, monthly forecasting, or really helping assess strategic projects. A great example of a strategic project is our ongoing growth and momentum with our Uncrustables frozen handheld sandwich. We have a $1 billion ambition for that brand by the end of our fiscal year 2026. We've had to build 3 plants. We have had to create multiple projections against the portfolio, and we've had to think about incremental investments in the form of trade or promotional activity, in the form of traditional marketing or marketing spend. And then lastly is how we continue to fund the startups of these manufacturing facilities. And to your point, that all comes down to how these finance teams partner with the businesses and how they bring those insights together to get a positive return on our investment.
If we were to go back in time 11 years ago and look at the types of people you were looking to bring into the finance function, and again, I know you weren't CFO way back then, but you had a sense of who the types of talent that was needed. And you look at the organization, the finance organization today, many of the people are the same types of skills, or is there something that's changed, something different, a different type of person that you might be looking for, skill set?
It's a great question, and there has been a subtle evolution over the last 11 years, as you've noted. If you rewound 11 years, as you've noted, I would acknowledge that we would have traditionally been looking for accounting-focused, accounting-trained individuals to step into the organization and help deliver the debits and credits, financial or accounting acumen of the organization. And those skills and abilities are still needed today. However, as the organization has grown, as the environment around the organization has grown, and the expectations for business have changed, we are also seeing that we need to support our traditional financial accounting type roles with those that have more of a corporate finance background, one that might be akin to the investment banking or private equity experiences that I had, along with bringing folks into the organization that have more data, more analytical skills, maybe some more technology-focused aspects as we think about how we deliver more of technology and process-based activities. And then the last comment I would make is the technology around us is changing so quickly. The transition from on-premise applications to off-premise applications, often referred to as cloud computing or cloud platforms. And as a result of that, we need more expertise with those individuals that understand process and compliance around cloud-based applications. And so the evolution or the mindset has changed. I would also say there's two other aspects. One, traditionally we recruited at the intern level or analyst level. Now we need to recruit at all levels of the organization to make sure that we're rounding out skill and ability. Also, the other thing that's very important to our company is that we continue to advance diversity in all aspects of the word diversity so that we're bringing thought leadership forward. We're bringing in also diversity in other forms and variables so that we continue to advance the function as we move forward.
We'd love to touch on the topic of AI with you. And we're certain there have been conversations for months and months now, and perhaps there are certain applications already that are part of you're able to leverage already, whether it's part of the sales function or supply chain. But when people talk to you about AI, how are you thinking this can help your finance function? What is it that where are the applications going to be that serve you as a finance leader?
Jack, we are in the early innings of studying and assessing and implementing artificial intelligence or AI within the overall J.M. Smucker Company and also within the finance function. There's a couple of things that we're considering today. One, what are those applications? What are those areas of the organization that are most ripe or suited for the early stages of AI? The second component is what is the governance around implementing AI in the spirit of confidentiality, of trade secrets, of know-how, of ensuring that we don't necessarily create a foot fault in terms of sharing information that we may not otherwise. Because once you use these cloud-based applications, it's now a part of their domain. And so really the governance framework is the second component. As you think about the overall Smucker Company, there's a few areas. One, we've rolled out Copilot. That is an AI tool that is developed by Microsoft. You'll find that more in the corporate environment. It's more of, hey, could you help me with a paper on X, Y, and Z? Or could you help me answer a question associated with A, B, and C? We're also seeing some applications in our manufacturing environment that are helping us with throughput. They're helping us with waste or yield. And so that's another area we're beginning to implement in select plants or facilities. And then the other component is we're considering what does this mean for areas around like customer service or call centers? Would AI be an application there that we could use? And then lastly is in the finance organization, we're on a journey today to improve how we record to report by taking our general ledger that's on-premise into the cloud. And we're also working to do our plan to perform from on-premise to in the cloud as well. And as we do that and we implement new ways of forecasting, are there certain variables or activities that we could lead to sort of AI-based focus or ultimately forecasting tools? And so that's where we're beginning to think about how artificial intelligence may come into not only the overall company, but also into the finance function as well.
The voice is participating in those types of explorations. Is it the IT folks as well as the FP&A team, or who's involved in that type of visionary sort of discussion?
So specific to the finance organization, you would have your head of financial plan analysis and your leader or financial controller of the company. Those would be the two individuals that would lead that conversation in partnership with your IS organization. And then you would want someone from your compliance team as well, so that you're bringing that holistic governance council together to say, okay, where does that application make the most sense in finance? And how can we bring that to life? And how can we do it in a holistic way? Back to my overarching point of you need to identify business application and you need to bring forward the governance or compliance aspect as well.
Okay, we're going to move to our finance strategic moment question, where we ask you just to look back in time and share a moment of insight that you've experienced. You've had 3 of these already today, but it might have happened 20 years ago for all we know. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
A great finance strategic moment for our company starts with the establishment of our transformation office. And what we mean by our transformation office is this is an organization that has responsibility for the entire company to think of new ways of working in the spirit of continuous improvement that results in cost and productivity savings. Our transformation office was established for a few key reasons. One, to build new ways of working together and collaborating across the organization. 2, to deliver a multi-year cost and productivity program defined in the hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars, and to support acquisition, integration, and synergy realization, along with the ability to support divestiture activity, inclusive of transition services agreement, along with identifying and removing stranded overhead that often comes from divestiture activities. We have developed 8 key work streams along with 2 secondary work streams in support of that. Those 8 work streams range anywhere from net revenue optimization, which has implications to top line, all the way through your operations and supply chain environment where you're looking for cost and productivity savings, through traditional selling general administrative activities where you're managing how you spend discretionary costs, along with getting more effective and efficient with the marketing dollars that we spend behind our brands. And then lastly is beginning to think about how we support those acquisitions and divestitures. This is our first fiscal year where we really realized the benefit of this office. And it is truly a foundation or focal point of how we continue to provide value as a company. And as a result of that, we have seen tremendous savings to our financial P&L this fiscal year. And we've established the opportunity for over the next several fiscal years to contribute substantial financial value. And lastly is it gave us the confidence. This group gave us the confidence to do an acquisition and to do a divestiture all in the same year because we had the right teams and the right work streams around it in order to ensure its success and positive outcome.
You know the feeling. A report deadline is looming, and your team is buried in spreadsheets with tasks like bank and payment processor reconciliations, journal entry prep, and cash flow reporting. But what if there was a better way? Ledge automates the tedious work that slows your team down, like high-volume transaction matching, journal entry creation, and even cash flow forecasting. Ledge glues all of your financial data together across your ERP, banks, payment processors, data warehouse, and more, and automates any workflow, no matter how complex or unique to your business. Get real-time cash flow visibility and make cash reporting and forecasting effortless while increasing controls and accuracy. And Ledge requires no IT or R&D resources. Ledge plugs right into your existing stack, so you can get set up in just a few hours. Imagine a world where your team can close the books faster with fewer resources. Imagine audit-ready data all year round. With Ledge, you can finally stop scaling headcount just to keep up with growth. Visit ledge.co. That's ledge.co to learn more about how you can automate your finance operations without the heavy lift.
We're going to jump to our mentoring round where we begin by asking you to look back, and we want you to think about that first 60 days you were in the CFO role at JM Smucker. And again, you had a great mentor, as you explained to us, but at the same time, there must have been something you didn't expect about this role when you stepped into it. And if you could go back in time, and that's what we do, we give you a pass to go back in time, what is it that you would tell yourself now if you could go back in time, that first 60 days in 2020 that you filled the role? What would it be that you tell yourself?
Jack, I was really well prepared to step in this role. I had tremendous support, both on a personal level and professional level. And I crossed all my T's and I dotted all the I's like any financial person would do to ensure that I was stepping into the role ready. Certainly didn't come into the role naive. I knew that it was going to be tough and I knew that it was going to be a learning curve. I had tremendous support from executive coach, from my boss, Mark Smucker, from my leadership team around me, throughout others across the organization. But the number one thing that I had to get comfortable with is I had to be my own self. And what I mean by that is I replaced a championship quarterback. Mark Belgia was one of the best in the industries, one of the best in the industry in terms of the way he delivered the company, the way he communicated with investors, and the way that he was respected and cared for by so many people. But what I realized is I could also be a championship quarterback, but I was going to come at the game a little bit differently, and it was okay. You need to come in and be your authentic self, have confidence that you know how to do the job, and acknowledge the fact that you don't have to be the previous person. And so that was a huge thing for me. And candidly, it took about 6 to 9 months. And then I sort of woke up and said, wait a minute, I'm more comfortable if I do it my way. And I think from that moment forward, it gave me a little bit more confidence in all venues, and particularly confidence when you have to make very difficult decisions or you have to communicate a very difficult story.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Tucker, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side. We're wondering if there's something your colleagues might not know about you, something you do in your off hours, something perhaps most people don't know about you. Anything, any interest, any pursuit, something?
Well, I'm very family focused and family centered. I'm sure that's consistent with many people, but my wife, Holly, is everything to me, and our 2 boys, Tucker and Reed. As a family, we have a passion for supporting our community, largely through the lens of children, families, and animals or pets. We have 3 pets, 3 dogs, and so that becomes very important to us. And we feel that it's important to help support those individuals, children beginning to families, to animal welfare. And so that's been very important to me and to our family. And so we spend a lot of our time in that advocacy or that approach. And so that would be one thing I'd offer to you and others.
From our discussion, I would think of you as a CFO that understands M&A. At least this is how I would distinguish you perhaps from your peers. You are perhaps a CFO, an M&A specialist who knows how to capture value via M&A. There are lots of classifications for finance leaders, clearly. But is that a good fit for you, or how would you reflect on the type of CFO you are?
There might be a subtle adjustment when I think about the role of the CFO and the way I deliver that role. I think about it very much from a strategic-led mindset. What is the right thing for the culture? What is the right thing for the strategy? How do we let finance inform the strategy? And furthermore, how do we continue to bring the company forward versus other CFOs may come forward and say, how do I ensure the debits and credits? How do I get focused on recording and closing the books? How do I think about a control environment? To me, we have to do all those things, but the role of today's CFO is to lead strategically and ensure compliance. And that's why I shared that vision of our hats: ensure compliance, deliver strategic advice or value. We just so happen at the Smucker Company have been very busy in portfolio reshape with acquisitions and divestitures. So I've had a natural skill set to support facilitating that journey. But every day we lead with a strategic minded focus of doing the right thing.
You keep going back to the culture. You begin with culture, and then it seems like it helps the strategy take shape. What I want to ask you is, was there ever an acquisition that looked great on paper in the financials, but it was the culture that ultimately the company said no, it's just doesn't fit our culture?
So recently, we're very active looking at acquisition ideas. And recently there was one, and just out of respect for sort of confidentiality, recently there was one that was very compelling. It aligned on a lot of different dimensions. It was very supportive to one of our businesses. It's a very exciting and on-trend brand. But we couldn't get comfortable with the value proposition or the story behind the brand because we just didn't feel like it fit the overall architecture of the J.M. Smucker portfolio and what it means to us to be a very inclusive, progressive, supportive company. And so we just made the decision that we didn't want to necessarily take on that cultural implication to the broader J.M. Smucker Company. And so we did pass.
Wow. Interesting. I was certain there must have been something you could share. That. Thank you for that. We also like to ask if there's something that's influenced your thinking, a book, podcast, some resource that you can recommend to the audience, Tucker, that you found of interest.
Yeah, there's two books that I found very interesting over my career. One is this book by the referred to as Valuation, and it's referred to as Measuring and Managing the Value of Companies. And what I like about it is it focuses on a metric, return on invested capital, which is a very holistic metric for delivering long-term shareholder value. And Tim Kohler from McKinsey wrote this book. And I've read it several times, and we've used it a little bit as a framework for decision-making within the finance function in support of making strategic decisions. And so I would highly recommend Valuation, Measuring and Managing the Value of Companies. It's a great book. The second, and we've talked a bit about culture here at the company, but we have a program called Discovering the Art of Leadership. And what it is, it's about creating a resident leader. And we define a resident leader as someone who's mindful of self and others, someone who builds hope and compassion so that we deliver in a holistic way. And there's a book that we've read through there. It's called Resonant Leadership. And that book is all around appreciative inquiry and how to bring self and teams along. And so those would be two books that I would highly recommend.
Excellent. Thank you. Excellent selections for us. We are up to our final question where we ask our guests to look forward finally the next 12 months. Tucker, we would like to know what your priorities are as CFO of J.M. Smucker & Company.
So specific to our organization, we're really focused on delivering our core business. We're focused on realizing our cost and productivity savings, our synergies, and addressing stranded overhead through our transformation office. And we want to also complete a seamless integration of our most recent acquisition, Hostess. As we think beyond that, we do want to acknowledge a couple of things. One, we continue to live in an inflationary environment, and so we want to continue to understand and assess how consumers are being impacted in this environment and how we can continue to be there for consumers by offering them a full value spectrum, where they shop, the products they choose, and how they want to consume in a given day part. I would also say that over the next 12 months, we're focused on advancing our people development, nurturing our culture, and also building out against technology platforms and applications. And then lastly, I would say, as Chief Financial Officer, it's very important that I continue to bring active and transparent communication to all of our constituents. I want to ensure that we continue to set credible financial targets in this environment. I also want to acknowledge that we need to prioritize our capital toward the highest and best returns. And as we deliver cost and productivity savings to our transformation office, that we continue to deploy our capital or cash on a balanced basis, where we're reinvesting in the company, but we're also returning capital to shareholders and debt investors as well. And so that's really the focus over the next 12 months, specific to the company, some of the more broader macroeconomic considerations, and then how I want to focus the communication style and investment style as we move forward.
Tucker Marshall, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOthoughtleader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.